What is up, and welcome back to Talk Nutrition. Today's episode 196. We are joined by my coach, Lawrence Wilson, I should really say. How are you, Larry?
Love to hear it, man. I'm super pumped and blessed to be on this podcast, man. I can't believe you've done 196 episodes. It's an honor to be part of it.
I just took a bit of a break, to be honest with you. But we're back, weekly episodes, and I love doing this stuff because, it's fun, first of all, to just share the stuff we do with our clients. And I know, you're just as passionate about this. But what I like even more is just having a conversation with someone else in the space like yourself and diving into more complex topics we see with our clients. Let's be honest, we're seeing more and more issues, and it's just a great way for people to learn and just take something away like every single week, put it into action. Have you done a lot of podcasts?
Really just having some... What do you say?
Have you done a lot of podcasting?
I've done about 7 or 8. I haven't had one of my own yet, but I've been on a guest on several. One of those being Nick's podcast, Life So Eden, which was cool.
Yeah, awesome. I listened to all of those. What were you going to say, by the way?
I was just going to say, having podcasts is just such a rare opportunity to be able to just be raw, real, honest, and get to know each other and get the audience to know them so that they can get to know us a little bit more. Very, very rare thing. I think in this day and age, it's all short form content. It's all reading from scripts. It's very planned, and you don't really know what to believe. So having some raw people being open, honest, and just having genuine conversations, I think is such an awesome opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. Dude, especially with the ChatGPT stuff, we're going to see this more and more, obviously. That stuff's here to stay, But at some point, it's like, okay, well, how much of this is truly the person who's in the trenches, coaching real people, who's not just mapping out content through ChatGPT, getting a script, using an app that even allows them to read from a script. There's these apps, right? You can read from the script and look somewhere else, but it'll fix your eyes. So it looks like you're watching, like looking at the camera. So you might just be reading, it's crazy. But I'm always like, how much of that is really around? Probably a lot more than people who are really doing this stuff and who are maybe doing more long form content, right? Which I think long form, that's how you can really get into the nuance,
100%. And nowadays, man, we're not at a lack of content. I don't think we have an availability issue when it comes to health, wellness, bettering ourselves across the board. There's so much information out there. We have new gyms coming up in every country in the world right now. We have a lot of money going into different supplements. The average person definitely spends thousands and thousands a year on fitness and health, yet they're still not getting results. Our world is filled with disease states and struggling issues and pushed by hard financial boundaries and stress-induced things and a lot of different lifestyle factors that we'll get into today. And I just think having that opportunity to actually learn some of the right things, to hear a different voice, and to be able to have a guideline is super valuable nowadays because, once again, we have so much out there, it's almost too much, right? Where people get so confused.
100%. I just talked about this last week's episode, when I was overweight. So for me, I started overweight, right? Trying to figure this out. I was in pounds, I'm trying to think, was it 235 maybe, 240? But I was pretty heavy. Not with muscle, by the way. So I was a little chunky. But even back then, this is 2012, dude, I was confused as hell because now there's TikTok and whatever. Back then it was documentaries, blogs, forums. It wasn't much better, And it's not much better now either.
Right?
In
Cholesterol is bad. Eggs are bad. Milk's good now. Eggs are bad now. Things constantly change where people, it's just what do I believe? Someone's telling me this is good, and then 10 years later, this is bad. What am I supposed to do? Right? So be able to look at something we'll talk today about root causes, looking back into history, some things that have not changed. We'll talk about lifestyle pillars. We'll talk a lot of things that we both look at when it comes to client success and client results across the board. And that really defeats all time. And a lot of these things are absolutely free, which is a beautiful aspect as well.
And the cool thing is too, if you think about it, and I will say with certain things, there's more knowledge around it now, more research. But if you think about it, dude, the things that would have helped me back then, before I got into this whole thing, the things that would have helped people 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's the same shit, really. If you think about it, it's not really changed. Now, mind you, obviously there's more issues now these days. There's more stress, there's more other things going around. So sure, maybe we're going to need more different approaches. Maybe we do need to get more into gut protocols and stuff. But the true foundation, the stuff that you call the pillars, right? The 7 pillars, that's kind of always been available. It's always been the thing that helps you stay healthy and get healthy, right? It's all basic stuff, really, if you think about it.
And like I said before, largely free. A lot of this is free of charge, which we'll get into that today. But
For
man, I'm
sure.
pumped to be on the podcast. I'll give you guys a little bit of background about myself, and then I'll let Rohan take it away here. But yeah, my name is Larry Wilson. So I work for a company called Scooby Health. I also own my own practice called Live Mighty Health. And what we do is really help with people with disease reversal, longevity, and prevention of diseases. I also work with a number of different bodybuilders. When I date back with my background, I was a skinny guy. I've had decent genetics, decent work ethic for a long time, but I was kind of in a shoe where I didn't know exactly what to do. I had to put on some weight for football. I got obsessed with the weight room and tracking macros, and almost to an unhealthy point to some extent. And that brought me into the bodybuilding world. As I pursued the bodybuilding world, really started to learn some of these nuances and different principles with diet approaches, fat loss approaches, even some health and wellness aspects as well. But as I started embarking in this bodybuilding journey, I actually realized some of it was unhealthy. And as I started to dive into what we call functional health, which is more root cause approaches and understanding how the body's system works and how our metabolic pathways work, a lot more complicated than just making any macro fit into, the general 200 protein, 300 carbs, 70 fat. Cool, let's train 4 times a week and put on some muscle. Once I started to get a little bit older and get exposed to some good mentors, I started to realize some things. And as I started embarking into my coaching journey about 6 years ago, these functional elements really came to my mind. I started looking at blood work. I realized, eating 6 meals a day, training 6 times a week super hard, that's actually aging me. I'm actually in a state of mTOR, which is our growth state constantly. I'm working, and it's part of the reason I see bodybuilders age so fast. It's not necessarily because of the PDs and the hard training, but because of the amount of food and the amount of stress they're putting their digestive system on, their mental health on. Even just the nuances of being so strict with every element of their certain timing of meals, certain timing of supplements. All that stuff does have a role and a play. But as I dove into it, I realized there's more to it than just training, nutrition, supplementation, and some of these nuances within root cause blood work, within looking into your true symptoms, within looking into different lifestyle pillars outside of just the training and supplementation and movement aspect of it. There's a lot more to it. And then I started seeing some of the numbers with, I'm here in the United States seeing all of our, I look at things like 50% of the United States is pre-diabetic. 75% is insulin resistant. 1 in 2 people after the age of 70 are going to have dementia of some sort, whether it's Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia, anything like that, right? So I started realizing these things, and I'm like, you know what? Genetics does play a role in this, but so does things like stress, inflammation, the gut. And I started connecting these dots. I started seeing caseworks work through. I started taking that into my own hands, started self-experimenting, started studying, applying that to some other people. And man, being able to reverse some diseases, being able to get people's life back, it realized a lot in myself and maybe back things up a little bit. And kind of like we talked about before, date back to prehistoric times in a way, like what really matters for getting healthy. And it's not as much as it's chalked up to be. A lot of it is basic, and we'll dive into some deeper nuances today about what to look for, about how to help things, and all things for longevity, disease reversal, and prevention. But man, that struck a different chord in me. It really did light a different fire to where I got very motivated, very passionate about it. And now I walk in my business with a different part of like passion, purpose, and faith. And I really know what I'm called to do here, which is help these people through reversing these diseases. And if I can play a role, and I know you're in the same boat, play a role in getting the world back to a healthier state, to where they can play with their kids more, to where they can live longer lives, to where they can be 100 years old and not, think that's impossible. All these different elements. And it really did call me, and it kind of made me back out of the bodybuilding world a little bit. And that's why, I haven't competed in a year and a half. I'm doing some different things. I've gone through some different elements of my own health journey as well. Outside of just, hey, I want to be the most jacked, lean guy possible, because that's not always the healthiest. And we'll talk about some of that today.
Yeah. Do you think you'll go back to that at some point? Or are you like, I'm just going to focus on health and kind of stay there? Still do the lifestyle.
So for me, it's a balance. I think, we work in different seasons, right? When I look at longevity in my age, right, the brain, I believe, stops developing at 25. So I talked about these different states being mTOR and also autophagy. mTOR, think cells are dividing, muscles being built, insulin-like growth factor, a very anabolic growth time period. Now, on the flip side of that, we have autophagy, more catabolic zone, right? We're not building a ton of muscle. We're cleaning the cells out. We're reversing aging. We're reversing disease. We're cleaning our systems out. It's like we need dark with light. We need light with dark. We need both these sides of things to keep longevity prime. So for me, in a perfect world for myself, I'd like to push the bodybuilding type style, hard training, muscle building, probably till I'm around 30, 35. And then once I hit 35 or so, I might start backing it down. I might start doing twice a year autophagy sessions where I do more plant-based, where I do more carnivore, where I do more fasting, where I do different diet variations to preserve longevity. You know, once again, monitoring things like insulin sensitivity, fasted insulin, and different elements we'll talk about today really opened my eyes up to what matters most for longevity. Muscle's huge, but at a certain point, it gets unhealthy. You know, if I want to be a pro bodybuilder and a legit bodybuilder in the off season, I might need to be 260 lean. I don't care if you're obese, you're shredded, you're natural, it doesn't matter. When you're 260 and somewhat lean even, that's 260 pounds at my height at 5'9". That's not going to be healthy regardless for my heart, for my organs, for my brain, for anything going on here. It's a lot. So for me, it's a push between balancing longevity with muscle building through a state until I think I hit 35, 40, and then I may back it off and do more zone 2 cardio. I may do more autophagy work. I may do more hiking. I may start getting into running. I may do more functional work. Like right now, I'm not very flexible. I'm not very like functionally fit. I'm very, in my mind, like I'm lean, I'm strong, I can bench 405. I'm very happy with all these things. But I know, you know, I want to have a family. I have certain goals and purposes and passions in life that are far, far beyond just the visual look. And it's more along with that longevity lifestyle that I want to live. So I'm incorporating some of these things, which we talked about called the 7 pillars, that I put into my life. And although I do emphasize a little bit more into mTOR, into muscle building, these different elements, I'm very aware of what's healthy and what's not healthy and what to look out for, that when I see these health markers start to decline, I know, hey, it's time to back off, Larry. It's time to switch roles. It's time to work on longevity a little bit more. So for me, I don't know if I can answer the question of if I'll hop on stage again. I'll always push bodybuilding in some regard. It just may look like different seasons as I enter different longevity goals and my health starts aging and, you know, paying attention to my actual lab markers and my symptoms and my state of well-being.
You said it perfectly. Seasons. Everything is seasons, right? I teach my clients this too, and I'm always like, look, there's not one way to do things. You briefly touched on this. You mentioned fasting. You mentioned a bit of vegan, carnivore, whatever. We might actually touch on that because I do want to break that down a bit, because those diets are often used in the, in quotes, wrong fashion, in my opinion. But everything is seasonal.
Very true. I agree.
And I think with that seasonality, we got to understand, I mean, this could be a whole other podcast too, where we fully, but everything's seasonal. That goes for your fat loss things. I've talked about this in my stories yesterday. I think you saw that too. We do got to understand there's going to be certain periods of maybe, let's say, restriction where the calories have to go down, right? There's going to be a season where, hey, like you now have these issues. It's not going to be a good thing for you to go into a calorie deficit. We're going to have a health-focused, more functional kind of season to fix that. Then maybe go there, right? We're going to have, I mean, summer season for a lot of people is going to be maintenance, health, right? But also for pushing yourself. That's a big one, because you just mentioned pushing yourself in terms of bodybuilding. I was talking to a client of mine who is entrepreneur, public speaker, a lot of stuff on his plate, a lot of traveling. And he is going through a big season with a launch. And I told him too, look, like I don't think we need to push ourselves to burnout. But I do believe personally that sometimes we're going to decide, hey, this is now going to be the priority for this season. I'm going to push myself, understanding that this is not going to be a sustainable thing long term. So right now, hey, maybe certain things need to suffer so that I can fully go for this goal. But then we're going to dial it back again and slow it down and focus on health, right? That seasonality is so key, man, like for everything.
100%. I always tell people we create the environment for our body. What are we trying to accomplish? Is it muscle building? Cool, create the environment for that. Is it a health phase where you're reversing Hashimoto's or autoimmune disease? Okay, cool. That's the season we're in. That's the environment we need to look at. When we look at things like, I mean, I always put the example with a tree, right? What does a tree need? Oxygen, sunlight, love, good soil, water, different elements like that. We're very similar in a way. We have to create the environment for our body in our current season, what we want to accomplish. No matter what that goal is, we create the environment. If we take a younger male to where his hormones levels are low, his testosterone might be decent, his free testosterone is low, obviously we look into lab panels, we look into why, but we also need to underline, you must create this environment for healing. that means, hey, you might be training 6 times a week like an animal and eating crazy amounts of food to grow right now, but that's not the goal at hand. Your current state right now is making this environment for your body to have these low testosterone levels. So backing it up, it might mean we have to train 2 to 3 days a week. We have to work on things like mental health, doing things like restorative yoga, Wim Hof breathing, walks in nature, gratitude list, all the hippie stuff that nobody really wants to do, but the basics that are key for success. We create this environment. It might mean, for a girl in a deficit, if she lost her cycle or she gets off birth control and she wants to retrieve her cycles and have normal cycles again, it might mean, hey, you have to be at maintenance right now. Our goals for weight loss are going to be set on hold. We're going to create this environment for your body to heal. That means we can't be hyper stressed. We can't be under eating. We can't be overtraining. We can't be misnourishing the body. We have to have an extreme focus on micronutrients. Every food needs to have a rhyme, reason, and purpose that are entering our body. What is it doing for this environment that we're trying to create? And then cool, environment's created. We get healed. We get reversed whatever's going on here. We're feeling better. We're more optimized. Let's jump back into this different season and create that environment around this. But know what we did to get healthy here will always keep us healthy. So let's chew the meat and spit out the bones. Let's take a lot of the good stuff here and apply it to our future goals as well as we balance different seasons. And that's a big standing that I always push to people is the whole environment thing, right?
100%. Speaking of environment, with technology and all the great things that we get in life, all the things that are improving by the second, I feel with that, our environment for optimal health is actually becoming worse and has been becoming worse. Meaning social media, we're now lacking that in-person connection. I know one of your pillars is going to be community, right? Making sure we're nourishing our friendships and spending quality time with the people around us. Like, we need that. But I feel like those things, right? Social media, okay, now we're more and more removed. Technology, right? We're spending more and more time inside. There's all these palatable, quick foods that you can even just DoorDash. It shows up on your doorstep, right? Now our steps go down and we get these high calorie foods.
We're seeing even higher income levels too,
Yeah. So the environment is actually getting worse as things get better, in quotes, right?
100%. What I was going to say, we're even getting farther away from the earth. We're chasing higher dollar signs. We're getting into the skyrise apartments. We're getting further and further away from what we were meant to do, like moving our body for work in different realms, being close to the earth. I mean, grounding and earthing, we'll get into that today, but I mean, that's a huge benefit as well. We get so far away from that stuff. We're trying to be at the luxury apartments on the top floor, seeing the sky rise. We're not near earth at all. We can hardly see any forests. We can hardly see any grass. We can hardly see any flowers. We're just seeing fancy cars, sky rises, apartments up top. It's a whole different form of living for what success is nowadays.
Yeah. And then, I mean, also there, speaking of success, the pressure, the stress, whether it's financial or running a business or all these other things.
I mean, I think you're exactly right with the whole success thing, right? People are grinding. It's like, cool, I want to make more money so I can get the bigger house, and I don't want my wife to work. Okay, cool. Now my wife is stressed out trying to clean this big house. Now I'm stressed out trying to make the money to provide for my wife, provide for these kids, provide for this nice house. It's into like an abundance mindset, people think. It's almost like a negative feedback loop with success. We keep upgrading everything. We keep spending more dollars on these objective things to keep upgrading our life, and it's just more maintenance. It's more work. It's more stress. Where in reality, we don't necessarily need all those things. Sure, I like to have my nice supplements. I like to have a nice stove to cook with. But outside of the basics, like decent car, you have a roof over your head, you have a decent kitchen, you can provide for your family. That's a great life, right? And obviously, when you have a surplus of money, you can spend freely where you'd like to. But don't push yourself into unnecessary stress. A lot of stress, I would say at least 80%, is self-induced by the life you're making based off of your own success.
Yeah. I mean, circadian rhythm, we have technology, we're on our phone all the time. Now we're impacting sleep, where we don't sleep enough, period, right? So there's so many things that with all the great modern things that actually make it worse for us to truly create that environment to be healthy, stay healthy. Because let's be honest, we see, especially stress related, but like we're seeing more and more issues now that are beyond the, hey, let's get on this healthy meal plan and you're good. let's start exercising and you're good. Like, no, like now we're seeing gut issues. We're seeing people lose their menstrual cycle. We're seeing people have low sex drive, no sex drive even. We're seeing all of these issues show up. And I think in Europe especially, people like to use the US as this big bad example, right? Because people in the US, they eat unhealthy and blah, 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 and everyone's overweight. Yeah, guess what? It's not much better over here. And that goes for Norway, where I live. That goes for Holland, where I'm from. Fucking every country in the world. Sure, there's better places, but I mean, it's a worldwide issue, and it's becoming more and more of a problem. Because you mostly help people with those issues, right?
With all sorts, right? So when we look at these different pillars, that kind of coordinates a lot with reversing some of the diseases. Some of the diseases are stemmed from the gut, 100%. I mean, the gut, you have to think, our gut-brain connection, the thyroid and gut connection. Our gut is going to be important for what we actually absorb and utilize in terms of food. When we look about all these different macro splits, all these different diets, none of that matters unless we're absorbing and utilizing that food. The only food that matters is what we're able to utilize and get absorbed and actually partition into the right nutrient realms and use in our metabolic pathways is always what I tell people. It's like, it matters a ton about what we eat, but it also matters like how is that food getting absorbed and utilized in our body to create a certain outcome.
So let's say, right, because I'm getting more and more clients like this too. I know this is the stuff that you and me are diving into. We're exploring client cases. Let's say someone really wants to drop body fat, yet they're also struggling with hair loss. They're constipated. They have a very irregular cycle. They're training CrossFit 5-6 times a week, and they want to run a marathon. But they also want to lose fat. What are some of the, and we could actually even just get into the pillars here. What are the main things you have people work on? And especially in this case, because I specifically want to bring this up because people tend to think more is better, more exercise, more stress, right? How would you go about this? What are the 7 pillars?
So we'll get into the pillars. Really what we always have to start with is symptoms, right? Taking account into your life, taking action, and taking a fine-tuned look at everything going on here. So what I always like to start off with is looking at symptoms, right? Digestive and lifestyle symptoms. How are you feeling head to toe? What does your current diet look like? Are you eating at home? Are you exercising? What does the current setup look like? Also medical information. What's your history look like in terms of medications? What do your injuries look like? What have your diagnoses looked like? What are all your symptoms head to toe in that realm as well in terms of the medical side? And then we take both of those cylinders. I always tell people symptoms are what matters most, but we can connect those symptoms to blood work and look and see different roadmaps of where we have to fine tune and spend extra time working to optimize to improve those actual symptoms. From that, I always compare them to what we've been calling 7 pillars from my mentor, Lifestyle of Eden, which is actually rooted in the Bible, which is kind of cool. But what these 7 pillars are is really a roadmap for exactly that: disease reversal, longevity, and also prevention. It starts with nutrition. It goes to body movement. It goes to things like autophagy. I talked about the clean out state versus the growth state, mTOR versus autophagy. It goes into sunlight, sleep, circadian rhythm, mitochondria support, our powerhouse of our cells. It goes into grounding. There's elements outside of that as well, like community, environmental toxicity, stress management, all the elements that we also need to bring apart, right? In terms of community, right? When we see things like laughter being a form of medicine, people don't think like that. The happier we are, the more positive we speak to ourselves, the internal standards we set for ourselves, what our environment looks like in terms of friends. Are we having positive energy? Are people being lackluster, lazy, and negative around us? Or are we speaking positive? I believe in that sense of vibrational energy and good vibes and positive outlooks on life. That does play a role in terms of healing. I mean, we look at things, I think I've talked to you about something like, this is kind of a cool comparison. I'm getting a little bit off tangent here. What is it? The cell danger response is what it's called. And this gets rooted into trauma. And I talked to you a little bit about, obviously, stress management, some of these elements. I want the audience to think about something. My mentor kind of outlined this to me and it really hit home. It's, hey, if you got coffee with a friend, based on your prior experiences, you're going to have 3 different outlooks on how this is going to go. If you meet your friend for coffee at 9 a.m. and your friend's 10 minutes late, okay, one person, because of their previous experiences, maybe they had a friend that actually got in a car wreck on the way to meet them in coffee previously. That person's going to be freaking out 5 minutes into waiting for you. Call an ambulance, call your mom, call your friends. What's going on? Is he okay? Is everything all right? Freaking out because they lost a friend previously. They have deep-rooted trauma changing how they look at the situation. Person 2 their friend may always be late. They're like, no big deal. I'm going to play on my phone. I'm going to swipe through Instagram and I'll just, wait for him when he comes. No big deal at all. A third person may be like, every person I meet is on point, right? They're here right at 9 a.m. sharp. So if they're late, I'm going to be pissed off, right? I'm going to be like, where are you? What's going on? Why would you show up late? Do you not respect my time? This, that, and the other. But that's 3 different responses that people may have for this coffee based on a previous experience. And then we think of things like stress and trauma, and that can actually change just like the way we think about something in that current moment. It can actually change how our cells respond. It's called the cell danger response. Our cells can actually change because of this stress, because of this trauma, because of our previous experiences. As far as in like, we look at somebody, let's say they're taking thyroid medication. That thyroid medication might not even work because at a cellular level, your cells can't communicate because of the stress and trauma induced at a cellular level. I always like to bring up that whole coffee talk example because we can truly all think of that. If we met somebody for coffee at a certain time and they were 10 minutes late, because of our prior experiences, we're going to have 3 different thought patterns, 3 different outlooks on what's going on and why is this person late and then how we respond to it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point you brought up, because even if we're talking thyroid medication, there's way more to it than just, we could even get into the whole, like, people are just being put on T4, etc. But, or they're not even looking at the right labs. But it's, how is your body still utilizing all of this? Is the stress and trauma still impacting how your body is going to respond? Because again, that could be completely off, and you could be perfect with your food, your training, and those kind of things, but it's still going to lead to issues.
Right, and you hit the nail on the head, right? We have to look at lab panels. We have to think 90% of T4, which is the inactive form, our hormones are produced 90% into T4, right? And only about 7 to 10% is produced into our active thyroid hormone T3. Yet a lot of different medical facilities and doctors are just testing TSH, which is our thyroid stimulating hormone. The pituitary gland communicating to the thyroid, how many hormones should we produce, right? And that goes into T4, our inactive form that is talked about, converts into T3, which is the most potent active form, which is only about 10% of our thyroid hormones, but it's 3 to 4 times more potent. It's what we're constantly missing on lab panels. So the number one thing to do when you might be having some of these symptoms is to get a deeper look so you can work with a professional and get to the root cause of it. So, when we talk about thyroid, we might have somebody generally get just a TSH on that lab panel. But I'm like, hey, let's go a step further. Let's see a full picture. When we go to get our car checked, we don't just look at the right tire. We look at the whole freaking thing, right? So with thyroid, we want to see the thyroid stimulating hormone. We want to see that inactive form T4 because that's what's going to convert into T3. T3 is going to be our most potent form. Now, there's also one called reverse T3, which is an inactive form. This, depending on like if the cells are not responding, if the conversion's bogged up between the gut, between constant stress, between hypo or hyperthyroidism, no matter what it might be, T3 may not be in a good spot, right? So if we just see TSH, we can't necessarily see what's going on. And then there's elements that you talked about with Hashimoto's, an autoimmune disorder, to where we could look at antibodies, TPAOB, thyroid peroxidase antibodies. And those are going to be antibodies within the cells. And I always tell people, autoimmune, when we look at it at its core, we know there's some genetics being at play here. But when we look at all the buckets on what causes things, it's going to be genetics, inflammation, gut, and also stress. Every single disease we have to look at on those elements. It's not just genetics. Constantly people name like, genetics are everything. This runs in my family. It's like, does it run in your family or does nobody in your family run? Like which one is it? There's so many different nuances to it to where it's more than it's just genetics. There's more to it. You don't just wake up one day with autoimmune, with cancer, with something going on. Sure, it may have been in your genetics, but something lit that fire on. It's the reason we see people, some people can smoke cigarettes all day long and they might never get lung cancer. Now we have that cigarette smoker that also never works out, that drinks heavy, that's stressed out, that has an abusive relationship, and boom, that channels on and now they have lung cancer. There's more to it than just genetics, and that's a lot of hard pills to swallow for people because everyone just wants to think it's bad luck or God doesn't love them or it's just genetics. I really strongly believe genetics play a huge role, but there's other elements we have to take into account and start working through some of these dysfunctions. I also tell people all the time, autoimmune, a good comparison I was taught is, let's say there's a fly on my face and I smack my face and I get that fly, but my face is also all red and swollen because I just smacked it. If we look at something like Hashimoto's and we see those antibodies, what's happening is the body's actually just responding the way it's supposed to. The immune system's overactive or underactive, the immune system's going haywire, and it's sending pro-cytokine cells, these pro-inflammatory cells, to go work through some of this ROS, this this stress, right? This oxidative stress in the body. It's going to address that. And it happens to be on the thyroid because that's where the dysfunction's being labeled right now. And what happens is it's affecting the thyroid, but the body's really just trying to send these pro-inflammatory cells to the thyroid, but it's impacting and damaging and causing oxidative stress to this thyroid, giving them Hashimoto's, right? In this realm. Whereas everyone thinks the body's attacking itself. The body's doing what it's supposed to do. It's just sending, just like I, smacked that bug on my face, it's sending these cells to go work through what's going on in the body. And it just happens to be on the thyroid, so the thyroid's getting damaged. The body's doing what it's constantly doing. When I talked about the environment, that environment you're creating right now is causing the body to do what it's supposed to do, which in this case, unfortunately, might be Hashis, or might be hyperthyroidism, might be blood sugar dysregulation, pre-diabetic levels, dementia. All these different diseases have deeper nuances to them than just, hey, it's a bad day, I got bad luck, I woke up with this, right? I really, really strongly think there's more that comes to it when we look at some of the case studies and some of the PubMed literature.
Yeah. I mean, that even goes for blood sugars too. I'm trying to think, this might have been Nick talking about this or someone else, but when we look at blood sugars and we look at your HbA1c, that's not a right now, that's a multiple month average. So that means that for multiple months, we've already been in a bad place. Let's say it's off, right? So it's not just like that in the moment. Sure, there's some markers that are like a momentary recording, but it's like, hey, it's a long-term thing. This is not just like the right now. It's the behaviors and the nutrition and everything that's led up to this moment right here for multiple months, sometimes even years, right?
Right. Some people just think it's, oh, I ate this cookie and that's causing my diabetes, right? Well, that cookie is not what broke the cord on this. It's a cookie every day and the bad diet and the high stress and this, that, and the other for countless months on hand. We look at it, it's not just one thing that caused the issue. You talked about the A1C, which is a 3-month average blood sugar. When we look at everything, that's a 3-month average. What have your last 90 days looked like in terms of this full lifestyle pillar, in terms of this entire environment? It's not just that cookie, right? You can, even either of us, like we can get away with a cookie right now because we're insulin sensitive. Our insulin can fire and clear that. But why don't we back up a little bit? If we're talking about blood sugars, let's overview maybe what people should look for with blood sugar and what we kind of see wrong, because this is such a huge issue. I talked to you about, at least the US wise, 50% of the US is pre-diabetic, where insulin resistance, when we see it with fasted insulin, it can be detected 10 to 15 years before you even get to the point to where blood sugars are running crazy. And we talked about, not to get on a tangent, but we talked about these buckets where a lot of the issues stem from: the stress, the genetics, the inflammation, the gut issues. When we talk inflammation, one way inflammation really occurs is these blood sugars run crazy. That causes inflammation to rise. And then once that rises, now our body's in an inflamed state. Think of it as within our body, these cells are all clouded right now. So communication's impaired. How our cells are going to be able to do things like converting T4 to T3 is impaired. Even just insulin sensitivity, how we partition nutrients, all these things are impaired. But when we look at blood sugars, I always tell people a lot of the time we just look at something like a fasted blood sugar. Now, a fasted blood sugar is going to be that whole like BG, right, on your blood work, or it might just be glucose. When we look at fasted blood sugar, that's after sleeping for 8, 9, 10 hours, right? You've been fasting, you've been sleeping through the night. It's not been in the presence of food. So by the time that fasted blood sugar becomes elevated, you've likely done a lot of steps in the wrong direction for a long period of time. If we look at the full picture, like with the thyroid, we're also going to do that with the blood sugars. We would look at things like not only that fasted blood sugar, but the 3-month average. How's your A1C? How's your blood sugar look on a 3-month average while you are actually eating? How's the body processing things? We could also look at things like fasted insulin. How are we releasing insulin to clear that glucose? When we look at the role of the pancreas, we have alpha and beta cells. One releases insulin to clear out blood sugars, and then one is going to release glucagon to release blood sugars. They have indirect relationships, kind of just like cortisol and melatonin, right? When we have cortisol rise, melatonin's low. When we get ready for sleep, melatonin's high and cortisol is low. The pancreas is kind of a similar way. If we're constantly having blood sugars release, insulin's going to be stemmed down, and then it has to release rapid fire to try to clear all these blood sugars. And what happens is we keep eating, we keep feeding, we stay in a hyper stress state, which also sends that fight or flight to release blood sugars into the system for quick available energy. And that insulin is constantly firing. And at some point, the pancreas can't keep up with this blood sugar. It's releasing insulin on a crazy basis to where it can't keep up with it. And insulin starts to stay dumbed down and doesn't release anymore. And this is what we call insulin resistance. And that causes the inflammation. That's what causes a lot of these issues. That can cause, we talk a lot about like cholesterol levels. It's not always just cholesterol levels leading to heart disease. It's bad cholesterol levels, high triglycerides, and then the inflammation that causes this plaquing to occur. It's some of these other elements, but a big root cause of a lot of issues is inflammation and starts with blood sugars.
So why would someone start? Like, let's say, cholesterol, like let's say lipids are off and blood sugars are off as well. What are some of the main pillars you would have someone work on?
So, I'd start really basic, right? We want to look at our habits. What are you doing when you wake up to when you go to bed? Of course, we have stressful lives. Of course, we have bills to pay, everything like that. But I always encourage somebody to start with the basics, start with what I call kind of the hippie shit, right? Getting outside, starting your circadian rhythm with sunlight, 20, 30 minutes of gentle walking, body movement, getting that sunlight to the eyes, setting that internal alarm clock for your body to be like, okay, I'm seeing the sun, cortisol is rising like it should. My internal alarm clock's telling me that 12 hours later, let's say it's at 8 a.m. I get outside. Now 8 p.m. melatonin's going to increase. And I'm going to start to get tired around 10 p.m., then get to bed. Now I got a proper sleep cycle. It starts with some of that stuff. The grounding, the proper cellular hydration, meaning not just water, but electrolytes, potassium, sodium, magnesium. Those are all huge, crucial elements. It starts with nutrition, right? Big focusing on micronutrients, not just what macros are you doing. Forget macros until you get to a point to where it's worthwhile. I want you guys to start focusing on micronutrients. What is this food doing for me? You can look at Brazil nuts and they're providing selenium. You can look at nori wraps, they're providing iodine. You can look at ground beef and it's causing all these different micronutrients to be filled. That's a big pillar for me. Overall, if somebody's dealing with blood sugar issues, I don't necessarily cut carbs, right? Because carbs will help not only our thyroid output, but also helps with stress. It helps put us to sleep. It helps manage cortisol. It helps with a lot. When we're in a low carb state, a lot can go wrong for sure, especially when we're in a hyper stress state. So a big focus for me on nutrition wise is going to be antioxidants. Antioxidants, I lean a lot on fruit, but vegetables are great too. Looking at your plate and really have colorful foods, right? We want to see a lot of different fruits providing those antioxidants. And antioxidants work by canceling out some of this oxidative stress, these free radicals in the body. That's why they're called antioxidants. So loading the body with nourishing foods. We talked previously about carnivore, keto, fasting. Before any of these, they are technically fad diets. They come a place. They are tools to be used. But before we look into that, I always like to tell people, if a diet has a name, most of the time it's BS. The best diet in the world is going to be Mediterranean-based. Anti-inflammatory, low glycemic foods, a lot of different fruits, fruit juices, helping that liver glycogen, helping convert T4 to T3, fueling antioxidants. You're getting wild-caught fish with omega-3s to lower inflammation. You're using cold extra virgin olive oil on top of your meals. You're cooking in quality saturated fats that are a stable environment so they don't oxidize into toxic oils. There's so much that we could go into. But I would say, start with the basics and start with a key emphasis on micronutrients and working to do things that are going to, in fact, lower that inflammation and work on some of the stress management aspects. It's not necessarily like always a carbohydrate issue. I've worked and reversed a lot of insulin resistance, pre-diabetic levels with still having carbs in the system, for sure.
I think food quality is so huge, the micronutrients. And I just put out like a new guide for people, new video training. And it's literally just breaking down, hey, eat these foods. Here's a couple shopping lists, put together your plate like this. Even if you were to do just that, focus on those whole foods. And you include things that you just mentioned. The fruits, the veggies, right? The wild-caught salmon, some ground beef, right? Getting those right foods in. And you just start with a couple, let's say 3 main meals and maybe like a fruit smoothie or something like that. Or, If you just start with that and just focus on the food quality and getting those micronutrients in, that's already going to do so much. Assuming you're going to stick with those 3-ish meals, maybe 4, right? Or 3 meals and a snack, but we're consistently getting those micronutrients in. All of a sudden, we're going to feel more full. We are eating an anti-inflammatory diet. We're getting the fiber for the gut, right? The cravings disappear. We have better energy. And as much as like we are macro-based for the most part, even without all of that stuff, like you're going to see results. Like you're for sure going to get healthier by eating like that consistently for the most part.
I would say for somebody that cannot track food and they don't want to put a lot of time into this, but they're willing to put in the work. Now keep in mind, this is restrictive, but this will put somebody in a better space. If you just are listening to this and you don't know what to do, you don't know where to start with some of the basic morning routine things, protect your sleep at night, set the hard boundaries, get all that under control, and then limit yourself to obviously whole foods, but I'm going to challenge you to take it a step further. Once again, this is a little restrictive, but it will get you in a better spot quick. And that would be consuming things like quality grass-fed meats, wild-caught fish, raw dairy, fruits, vegetables, and maybe some nuts. If you can limit yourself to just that and then have things like water, tea, coffee, and that be your only liquids, you will return back to better states of health. You will lose weight. You will work to restore insulin sensitivity. You will work through all these elements. It's very restrictive, but this is a way to get you in the right direction pretty quick. And then it's like, hey, I'm in a better spot. Now I'm ready to work with a professional to work through these different symptoms. And that's when you can dive into particular foods that their micronutrients going to be categorized just for you, or a system that's going to be allow you to stay accountable and get the results and to be able to work through some of these root causes. But, as a general tip for somebody, if you didn't know where to start and you're able to get a little bit more restrictive, you don't have to restrict calories. Just look and restrict different foods, right? Cut out the BS refined sugar. For a little bit, you could cut out some different grains, right? You could cut out gluten. You could get strict with it and still be able to cook different meals, right? The eggs, grass-fed meat, wild-caught fish, the fruits, the vegetables, the actual like different nuts out there. If you really wanted to, you could do some different types of raw dairy. I think that can be pretty beneficial too. But of course, we dive into like, if you have gut issues, if you're this, that, and the other, if you have intolerances, that's a different story.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think so, like, absolutely, man. Like that's going to be the most impactful stuff. I personally don't even see that as restrictive because in my head, it's like, no, we're giving the body all these great nutrients. We're giving it everything that it actually truly needs. I do get it, of course, it is limiting, 100%. But that's a nice little shift because a lot of times people tend to still think restrictive from like a negative point of view. But then again, I mean, if this is something that will inherently make us healthier, you know what? Even if we talk about fat loss and we are going to restrict calories, it's just a short season, doesn't have to be long. But if we can just do these things that, sure, by definition are a little bit more restrictive, to then get a healthier body, stronger body, get the results, create a better relationship with food and all that good stuff, and live longer, healthier, it's always worth it. And it's actually giving you back a lot more.
100%. It really is. It's 6 months that could change your life. When we look at, I can't remember the exact data points on this one, but I believe it's like every year of a disease state or kind of working the wrong direction, it's going to take you about 2 to 3 months to fix back, right? So let's say it's 10 years of dysfunction. It might take you 12 months, 14 months, 15 months to restore all that damage back to an amazing state. And that's really not that much time. Time flies regardless. It's about what you're going to do with it. If we look at 10 years of making poor choices, if for a year and a half you can make the right choices and restore the last 10 years of damage, that in my mind is a pretty good bargain.
I would say so. Dude, I love this conversation. I think we should do this more. I do want to be respectful for your time, of course. So that being said, where can people find you? And is there anything else you wanted to share with us?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to do this as much as I possibly can, man. It's part of my pride, joy, passion, 100%. Anybody can find me on Instagram, liftingwith.larry_ScoobyHealth, or just search Lifting with Larry and it'll come up. My email is larry@scoobyhealth.com. If anybody has any questions, I'm always happy to give some free value, free workthroughs, and just general ideas. My clarity calls are always free. And of course, Johan here has beautiful, beautiful results and is very knowledgeable as well. So, I feel like you guys are in safe hands regardless of who you reach out to. But the point I want to leave you guys with is look around and look at some of these different data points, right? I talked about 1 in 2 people after the age of 70 are going to have some form of dementia. And we look at it, we go to a family gathering, we look at our friends, we look in the table, and we start thinking about some of these, how many people have autoimmune disorders, how many people end up with dementia, how many people have gut issues, pre-diabetic levels. And the numbers are shocking. When we look around a table of our loved ones and we start to realize, holy crap, in 20 or 30 years, half these people are going to be diseased. 75% of these people might have other issues. And we have to be that, I say, like, doctor of the family, right? Make the right steps, make the right decisions. It starts with our habits, and that momentum builds, but you must protect that momentum each and every day. And if it starts with you, that can spread to your family. So a lot of the time, there's billions of people in this world, but if it can start with us, if it can start with our household, if it can start with you in your household, sure, you may not change the whole world, but you can change your life, your family's lives, your friends' lives, and then they can then go spread that everywhere too. And then we have this compounding effect, and it can change the world. I really do believe that.
Yeah, same. And like people like you and me, like we're gonna keep fighting for that. There's a lot we're fighting against in a way. But dude, again, like you just said, even if we just impact one person with this podcast episode and they actually make those changes and they get healthier because of it and live a better life and then become the example, like that's how we can truly impact the world. And I do believe that is possible. It's going to take some work, a lot of work. But if we just keep preaching the pillars, right? Keep making sure we put out this kind of content. And absolutely, man. Through our clients, they can impact their family and just literally change like generations. So let's get to work, I would say.
100%. We have to rise above. We have to create that high internal standard. We have to block out society's level of normal. We have to block out these normal levels of blood work. We have to be the minority. We have to be the people chasing greatness and protecting the momentum and walking how we talk, right? Walking for what we want to live for. Oh, I'd do anything for my kids. I would die for my kids. Well, would you eat healthy? Would you manage your stress? Would you walk? Would you get healthy? That's how I think of it, man. And it's changed my life, and that's my goal in life right now, is to help elevate other people's lives to do the same.
Awesome, man. Dude, thank you so much. We'll do this again. I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, bro. Thank you, guys.